talk about consequences. We all know you do something, and there's going to be a reaction. There's going to be an effect, cause and effect. We all learn this in school, probably at an early age. For example, right now, doing a little over the speed limit right now. There's a consequence to that if I get caught. In my opinion, in my situation, it would be a negative reaction, speeding ticket, or even a warning. Regardless, there's a consequence to it. Now, NATO is doing stuff in Eastern Europe. And the way that NATO is operating, they're acting like there's going to be no consequences. Now, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, I'm not choosing a side. I'm not going to say I support Ukraine, and I'm not going to say I support Russia. I'm going to say it as it is. NATO is provoking this war. 100%. NATO is provoking this war. Now with Finland and Sweden attempting or trying to join NATO now. Let's go back to consequences. Russia's being pushed into a corner. Russia is, think of it this way, Russia is a wild animal being trapped into a corner. Would you trap a mountain lion, a wild, angry, hungry mountain lion into a corner? Unless they're suicidal, the answer would be no. But it's going to happen when you trap that hungry, angry mountain lion into a corner. It's going to attack. I'm not saying I'm defending the actions of Putin because of this. I'm not saying I defend his actions. I am simply saying he's doing what any animal would do naturally if they are trapped into a corner. You poke a dog with a stick. This can be the nicest dog in the world. You poke this dog with a stick, keep on poking it, poke. You poke it some more. Now this thing is getting pissed off. And you poke it a little bit more and it bites you. You should know this because I did this as a kid. I wasn't very smart. Anyways, I got what was coming to me. The dog bit me in the face. You poke Russia with a stick, it's gonna bite back. This is plain and simple. There's consequences to our actions. We sanction the ever-living shit out of Russia. Now Russia's economy is doing great again. Our actions are having a negative reaction to ourselves and other Western countries. Not so much to Russia. Russia is a very self-sufficient country. They don't really need anyone else. Having other countries buying their stuff is great for their economy, but they don't need other countries. Russia is very self-sufficient. Let's go back to Sweden and Finland trying to join NATO. Let's talk about Russia potentially using a tactical nuclear warhead or even more, or even worse, I'm sorry, a regular strength, full yield nuclear warhead. Russia will use these weapons if they feel that it's under threat of not existing anymore. They will use these weapons. Sweden and Finland are now making things even worse by trying to join NATO. And guys, I'm sorry to say this. I'm sorry to be so blunt, so rude sounding, but for this war to be over right now, Ukraine needs to surrender. Ukraine needs to surrender to Russia. And the whole thing will be over, for the most part. The violence would end, and things would start to go back to a more normal state. Things won't be the same, but things will start to get better if Ukraine were to surrender. Again, I'm not saying I support Ukraine. I'm not saying I support Russia. These are the cold, hard facts. Ukraine continues to resist. Russia's going to continue to push. Ukraine stops resisting and surrenders. Ukraine stops pushing. Russia stops pushing. The threat of nuclear weapons goes back down. And things start to go back to a more normal state than they were. A more stabilized state, should I say. I know it's a horrible thing to hear, but it's the absolute truth. As you can't be single-sided in this situation. You have to look at things in a light where you might not like, but that's the way things are. Now, without all of that being said, we all know that's not going to happen. We all know Ukraine's not going to surrender, and we know NATO is probably more than likely going to accept Finland and Sweden. That being said, let's focus on the possibility of a tactical weapon being used. And this is what I personally would do. If a tactical nuclear weapon is used in Europe, what I personally would do, I would go home. Or I would stick around home. I probably wouldn't drive to California because I want to be closer to home just in case shit goes down here. Now, if a tactical nuclear weapon were to be used in Europe, the United States would probably respond similarly. Be it in Ukraine or be it on a NATO country. If it's on a NATO country, then the response might be a little more harsh. Again, with that being said, what I would do here is I would stay closer to home. I would try to probably take loads to Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, maybe Colorado. I would not try to be going any further west than Phoenix. I would probably not go any further north than Denver. And I would go no further than probably San Antonio. I would want to stay home just in case the threat of an EMP were to happen over the United States. And with the recent threats of Iran trying to, or saying that they want to use an EMP over the United States, add that with, let's say Russia were to use a tactical nuclear weapon in Europe, add that on top of it, the threats of an EMP here or the threats of a nuclear weapon being used here slightly go up. Now, I would want to make sure I would be able to get home. So I would stay close to home. I would definitely make sure I'd buy even more food. I'd stock up on even more water. And then we'd probably go into a wartime economy. Things would probably be rationed. And depending on how bad things get, I would still likely have a job. A lot of the country would probably go on lockdown, or a soft lockdown, or something similar. You know, we haven't been in the modern United States hasn't been in a war in a major war in a very long time. God only knows how the United States would actually react. But I would still likely have a job just because of what I do. But I would definitely try to stay really close to home. And if things got really, really bad, I might even go local. I would want to stay as close to home as possible. I'd gather all of my supplies. And I'm currently in a bug-in situation at my house. I have a mag. I have land. And I'm more secure at home. If I was still living in El Paso, I would be in a bug-out situation. I would not be staying in El Paso. What I would suggest all of you to do, if you are in or around a major city, like we all know the real big cities. But even if you're around cities like El Paso, Phoenix, even Tucson, Yuma, Sacramento, Bakersfield, you name it, Tampa, these kind of cities, these smaller cities, but they're still fairly large. My suggestion would be to get away from them. Now, I'm not saying you have to, but I would suggest if you have the ability to get away from these places, then get away from them. Be it even if it's temporarily getting away from these places. You have somewhere to go. I'm not saying, go to the woods and never come back. I'm not saying to abandon your house or your apartment or anything. If you have the ability, if you have somewhere to go, then I would recommend going there, especially before it's too late, if it's too late. Because, guys, we don't know what's going to happen. But it's always best to be safe than sorry. It's the analogy of having a gun. I'd rather have a gun and not ever need it than not having a gun and needing it. Same kind of situation. I'd rather have the ability to leave than not having the ability to leave and needing to leave. It's just something that you want to have in the back of your head. Make sure you have the ability to leave. I hope you never need to. Guys, study the signs. Study what's going on around the world. And if they do use a tactical weapon in Europe, at that very moment, and I guarantee you'll know. It'll be all over the news. At that moment that a tactical weapon is used in Europe, that's when you need to be like, okay, do I need to leave right now? Do I need to leave my house? Is it going to be safe where I am in case this shit comes here? Or am I going to be safe? For me personally, I will be safe at home for the immediate beginning of the situation. If they were to use a tactical weapon or a regular nuclear weapon in the United States, in my area, if closest area where they would probably use a nuclear weapon close to me would probably be Albuquerque. And I would be safe from Albuquerque fallout. Taking into effect the physical location of Albuquerque, considering the average wind direction, I would be most likely, I would say, about 90% safe from that. Now, my issue is water in my area. I don't have water in my immediate area. I do have well water. I do not have a hand pump. That is something that I want to get here really soon. But if this were to happen before I'm able to get a hand pump, I have water at home, enough of it to last a little while. But I would soon be going to the mountains, where I do have somewhere to go in the mountains that is close to a source of water, a clean source of water.